A golden sunrise stretches across the turquoise waters of the Caribbean. The waves crash lazily against a private palm-lined beach. Inside a sprawling glass-walled villa perched atop a cliff, Calvin Ayres stirs awake, rubbing his temples. A bottle of half-finished whiskey sits on the nightstand next to a pair of designer sunglasses. The remnants of last night's party linger, a model draped across the couch, a poker table littered with casino chips, and a Bluetooth speaker still faintly humming electronic music. Calvin slides out of bed, stretches and walks barefoot onto the terrace, overlooking the endless ocean. He lights a Cuban cigar and exhales slowly, watching the smoke disappear into the morning breeze. The world might see him as a fugitive, a maverick, a billionaire who left in the face of the law. But for him, it's just another day in paradise. Cold winds cut through the vast Canadian plains. A young Calvin Ayres, dressed in a thick winter coat, loads hay onto a truck on his family's pig farm. It's a life of hard labor, of long days and little money. But even then, Calvin isn't the type to settle. He isn't meant for the mud and the frost. He's meant for something bigger. In university, he stumbles onto something that changes his life: computer networking. While the world is still wrapping its head around the internet, Calvin sees an opportunity. What if people could gamble from their computers? What if they didn't need Vegas or Atlantic City or smoky backroom poker games? The idea takes hold, and like a true gambler, Calvin goes all in. The early days aren't glamorous. With borrowed money, Calvin sets up shop in an apartment surrounded by computers and endless lines of code. Online gambling is still the Wild West, legal gray areas, offshore loopholes, and regulators struggling to keep up. But Calvin doesn't wait for permission. He sees an open road and floors the gas pedal. Bodog launches, and suddenly gamblers from around the world are placing bets from their living rooms. The timing is perfect. Sports betting, online poker, and casino games explode in popularity. By the early 2000s, Bodog is raking in millions. Calvin, now a multi-millionaire, isn't just running an empire, he's becoming a brand. He plasters his face across advertisements, throws extravagant parties, and transforms himself into a larger-than-life figure. The media eats it up. He's the playboy of online gambling, the man who beat Vegas at its own game. His parties are legendary, VIP only, filled with celebrities, models, and endless bottles of Dom Perignon. The more the media paints him as a rogue billionaire, the more he leans into it. Bodog isn't just about gambling anymore, it's a lifestyle brand. Calvin starts sponsoring sports teams, launching a music label, and even dipping into reality television. His empire spans across continents, and money is pouring in faster than he can spend it. But the real thrill isn't the money, it's the game itself. Beating the odds, outmaneuvering regulators, and staying one step ahead of the authorities. At one of his famous parties, an investor pulls him aside. "You know they're coming for you, right?" he says, swirling his scotch. Calvin grins unfazed. "They've been coming for me for years." But this time, the storm on the horizon is real. The Department of Justice launches a crackdown on online gambling, hitting companies with indictments, seizing domains, and arresting executives. One day, Calvin wakes up to find Bodog's US operations effectively shut down. He's hit with a federal indictment for running an illegal gambling operation, facing up to 25 years in prison if convicted. Does he panic? Does he beg for mercy? Hell no. Instead, he does what he does best. He disappears. While authorities search for him, Calvin is already setting up shop in the Caribbean. He renounces his ties to Canada, gets diplomatic protection in Antigua, and reinvents himself as a global investor. Bodog may be gone from the US, but Calvin isn't done. He pivots to cryptocurrency, seeing it as the next big thing. He begins pouring money into Bitcoin, making early bets that will turn him into one of the biggest crypto investors in the world. For years, Calvin lies as an untouchable fugitive. The FBI can't get him, the courts can't summon him, and extradition is a joke. He taunts his critics from afar, throwing even bigger parties, investing in even crazier ventures. In his world, laws are merely suggestions. By the time the dust settles, online gambling is no longer the wild frontier, it's big business, legalized in states and regulated across countries. Calvin, ever the strategist, doesn't bother fighting old battles. Instead, he reinvents himself as a tech mogul, throwing his weight behind Bitcoin SV, a controversial but ambitious cryptocurrency. His Caribbean estate becomes a headquarters of sorts, meetings with blockchain developers by day, fire dancer-fueled parties by night. He builds resorts, funds fintech projects, and keeps expanding his empire. The indictment, quietly dropped in 2017, turns out even the government realized it wasn't worth chasing a man who had already won the game. Now Calvin Ayres sits at the top of a fortune that stretches across industries, across countries, across legal definitions of what's allowed. Some call him a criminal mastermind, others call him a genius. Calvin, he just calls it another successful bet. The sun is setting over the Caribbean. Calvin lounges on his private yacht, sipping whiskey as the waves lap against the hull. A friend jokes about his past, about the FBI, about the countless headlines that once labeled him a villain. Calvin just smirks, exhales a cloud of cigar smoke, and leans back. "You can't win if you don't play," he says. And as the waves roll in, the party king of gambling watches the world keep spinning, just as he always planned. Calvin Ayres' parties weren't just wild, they were the stuff of legend. Private islands, supermodels flown in from across the globe, bottomless champagne. Guests signed NDAs just to enter. Rumors swirled about billion-dollar poker hands played in darkened rooms. High-stakes deals sealed over bottles of 50-year-old scotch. Some claim they saw Hollywood stars betting millions on a single coin flip. Others whispered about the underground fight clubs staged for entertainment. While most entrepreneurs built their businesses with careful planning and strategic partnerships, Calvin played it like a gambler. He never played it safe. When authorities cracked down on online gambling, most operators folded. Calvin doubled down. He saw opportunity in chaos, riding the waves of regulatory loopholes and international finance laws like a seasoned high roller. Today, his name is still whispered in hushed tones in the corridors of power. Some fear him, some admire him, but one thing's for sure, Calvin Ayres is still at the table, still playing the game and still betting big.